Hello. I'm not late. You were early. How's the audio? Audio. Looks like it's working. So DNC today. Okay, seems like it's actually working. We have some questions already. That's good. We are over 100 people. Amazing. Amazing. Let's turn this without turning it off. How's that? Okay. There we go. Okay. Only 15 minutes late. That's the normal 15 minutes, I think. Say what you want about Jakey, but he's a setup physics genius. Okay, that's a good one to start off with. Gain some confidence. Thank you. And you know what? It was even a guy who has TLR in his name. TLR camp. That is amazing. Okay. There's even some super chats. We got, how do I show it? There we go. To Cole's beer fund. Cole Ogden had some issues, I heard. I don't exactly know what the problem was, but most likely beer was involved. And we got $10 for a super sticker. Maybe it's this one for this. Hashtag stop complaining. Thank you for those anyway. And since we got beer fund money, I knew we would get some, so I have a beer prepared. Cheers. Okay. So we're going to start with DNC overview. Preparation, almost zero. So I'm going on the No Name RC podcast next week, and then we'll talk about the main with some facts. So I'll do that analysis of the lap times. I'm pretty sure that a couple of drivers who weren't on the podium, or actually one of them was Kanas, wasn't he, in third? And Boots also. I think they had really good pace in the main, but they were so far back that they didn't really feature. And then I think that there were a lot of mistakes also by Maifield and Fend, more than usual. And I don't really know how Mason did. He seemed like he was leading at one point, looked like maybe he had it, but I think maybe he had a bad mistake or something. So we'll check the lap times and see. Maybe the fact that he had one pit stop more also dropped him back. So the lap times will tell that story. We'll do that on the No Name RC podcast. Also, I think we'll pull some clips and look at Fend and maybe someone else. And today, we'll mainly talk about my experience at the DNC, the Mayako drivers, working with Cavalieri, and the setup sheet of my car. And it's very close to Pekko's and Ryan's also. And then we'll watch some video of my car going around the track, and I'll explain why I ran the setup I did, and basically explain the thinking behind the setup. And I'll try and be brief this time because I'm tired, jet lagged. Okay, so where do we start? I got some pictures, I think, somewhere. if you want to be sure that I see the comments, you have to super chat. Them I'll see for sure. Other comments I see, if I see them, I'll reply. But first, let's start with the actual topic. Oh, by the way, for any touring car racers out there, the last live I did was TITC. I have to brag a bit now, really, I have to. So there's an ETS in Austria, it's on carpet. And yesterday, Michael seeded third. So I think it was Velka was quite a bit ahead. Then Ronne Falk was second, and Michael was third. And the last couple of runs of practice I did, Michael texted me and I helped him with the setup a bit. But then for the second seeding, he switched to a completely different setup that someone else on the team was running. So then for Q1, regrouped, and I sent him a setup. Now I'm not there and I'm not driving. I haven't driven that track. I don't know other than it's carpet. So I came up with a setup on the computer, sent it to him, said, put this on. And he did, and he TQ'd the first round of qualifying. And then I suggested some changes for the second one, but he was afraid to do it. He went a safer way, in his opinion, with just a very tiny change. And he TQ'd the second round too. So that was interesting for me, because now I've given advice to Michael on asphalt and on carpet, two very different tracks. And this second time I'm not even there, so I haven't even really seen his car. I'm just going off theory and my conclusions when I think about it. So that was really good. So touring car work is still on the way, and planning to start writing the book soon. Anyway. How do I share this? Window. There we go. So I went to America. I arrived in Trump country, stayed at Degani's house, and he had this hat waiting for me. I was really jet lagged. It was a long trip, as you can see. I look Asian. Pekko always says that I look Asian without my glasses. And here I look very Asian. Let me change the background. How do I do that? Yeah. Okay. So very jet lagged. It was a long trip. I went there with Pekko. Here we see his new paint job. What do you think of this? He added white to it. Now I call him Hagberg, because he looks like Alexander Hagberg now, especially in touring car. Actually, I think in off-road, the paint job works better and it's more bright. So I flew over with Pekko. This was his first time on the West Coast. He's been to America at RCGP in Myrtle Beach and AMS. So he has raced in America, but not on this type of track that gets really rough, sort of low me loose and gets really bumpy. And it was a exceptionally hard DNC for him, because there was no practice in nitro buggy whatsoever, and only one run in e-buggy for him. And I got both my wait a minute. Yeah, I got one run, but I got to run nitro buggy also, because the rain started just after that. So I was happy about that. And Pekko did really well. He qualified in C main in nitro buggy, but bumped to the B. It was a really hard fought race. He won the C main, bumped to the B, and then in the B he was in the battle. I would say a couple of bad mistakes, which he didn't need. A bit more luck, a bit more sort of a couple of better decisions on track, and he could have bumped. His pace was good in the B main too. So good effort overall, I would say. especially it being his first race on the West Coast. E-buggy, I can't even remember where he finished in e-buggy. Maybe I should. In Truggy, he was in the battle for bumping to the main also, but I missed the Truggy race. Something happened. Did he flame out? I think he flamed out. So anyway, B mains, but good effort overall. And he had a battle with Tebow, so former Mayako driver Jared Tebow. That was a really good battle in the B main, which Pekko won. So Pekko finished one spot ahead of Jared. And Robert was already in the C main, where they actually came together. It was an accident. Robert was mad because Pekko should have waited, which I agree. If this was a European race or Euros or Worlds, I would agree that he should wait. But because it's the DNC, because it's a race in America, I actually told Pekko to just keep going, because he's got the wrong end of the stick so many times. And now he wasn't overdriving or pushing too hard. It was just the hairpin on the right after the hip jump. So you do the hip jump, back right corner, then the straight towards the driver's stand, sort of on the right-hand side, and then there's a hairpin. So right in that hairpin, he was on the brakes. He hit the bump there before the corner. Robert was just turning, barely nudged the rear end of Robert, and Robert flipped. And yes, it's Pekko's fault because he hit Robert from behind. But with this being the DNC, just keep going. You have to. You can't hate the player, hate the game, because that's what all these other guys do. It's if you're racing for the win, okay, I think then maybe the top guys would wait. But I swear to God, if that was Maifield, he would not have waited, right? If that was anyone else at the top, they would not have waited. I do not believe that for a second. So I think for racing, it's better that when you hit someone from behind, you wait. I agree. But the culture of this race is not that. So then I think if you really want to do well, you can't be Mr. Nice Guy in that situation. Anyway, what do you think? You can comment below. So the reason we were at DNC was this guy. So Invisible Speed signed Ryan Cavalieri for this year. And it was already after Mayako had said that not going to sign a top driver, doing the youth mentoring program instead. And decided that Invisible Speed could benefit from signing Ryan. And the reason is that everyone knows him. He's a 4-time world champion, but the last few years, his results haven't been that good. And people say that he's too old, he's washed up, he's just racing for a paycheck. But I think that there's more to it. I think the problem really is that, yes, he is older. Yes, I would say the competition is higher now and more professional than before. But I believe that the main thing that's holding Ryan back is lack of knowledge when it comes to setting up the car. So I think that his cars are not handling and performing the way he wants them to perform. And now at this age and this life situation, I should say, that's what he needs to do well. He has to have a car that he is 100% confident and comfortable with, and then he can do well. But it will require that he will put more time in at the track. So here you see us working together. I look very angry here for some reason. I wasn't. But I worked on his cars to make sure that they were as good as possible and talk to him about how he felt out on the track and tried to ask the right questions to get an idea of how he was driving them and how they felt. So what was he afraid of, or where was he confident? How much was he turning the wheel? What was he doing? Because I found that different drivers describe car handling in a different way. So it has to be a combination of watching the car and then listening to feedback, but mainly the feedback of how it feels, not the feedback of what they think they need to do. I have to make that decision on my own. And finally, we got the invisible speed setup tools also. So it was actually a pleasure to work on the cars and set them up, because now I have my own tools to do that. And everyone who's ordered them, they're still available on the website to order. All I get in response from the manufacturer. What happened now? Are we back? Yeah, all I get as a response is that they're in laser engraving. So let me check the live here. Something just happened. So, okay, seems to be working. So I really hope that we can ship out all the setup stations this month. I will keep you posted. And then we have a video, but we're not gonna go to the video yet, are we? Let's check a couple of the comments. Here we have a super chat. Are you coming down to the 10th Buggy Worlds in Sydney later this year? As of now, no, I'm not. But there are actually a couple of interesting developments to do with the 10 scale worlds, because some people have reached out to me asking if I could help them for that race. And Mayako doesn't have a car. I don't have any sort of ties or affiliations in 10 scale off-road, but it could be interesting, especially because it's a dirt track. So I might either go or not be there, but be present in the sense of supporting some drivers at the Worlds. But as of now, I'm not going, but it could change. And thank you for that $5. And Ronnie just sent $4.99, but no question. Thank you. Kevin Mendez asks, progress of pre-orders for invisible speed setup station. See, I read your mind. I already answered that. Thank you. Neo is here. He's ready for the last question, but we aren't there yet. I think next we're going to look at my setup sheet. Actually, before we do that, one more thing. This is also a testament to how good the Mayako car was there, because Chris Morale only races pretty much once a year, sometimes twice a year. The last race he did was Silver State, which was in May last year. And now he raced the DNC, and he TQ'd intermediate. And he's not a pro driver, has never been a pro driver. So that was a really good performance. I can't remember where he finished in the main. I think didn't make the right adjustments for how much the track changed. Maybe it was 6th or 7th or something like that. But to TQ intermediate with no practice, really, that says a lot about the car, I think, and how stable and easy it is to drive on tracks like that. So good job to Chris. Okay, so my setup sheet, let's take a look at that. Okay. Okay, you should see a PDF now of the setup. I think a lot of this translates over to other cars also. But of course, this is specific to the Mayako. So let's start with the conditions. If you don't know, it was really bumpy. It was quite loose. They watered for most of my runs. When they didn't water the track, it kind of grooved up. It had a grippier groove and then dust on the outside. As soon as they watered, it would be a bit loamier and looser. The 40 plus main was maybe when the track was at its best or most fun, I think, because the sun was still up, but it was going down, so I could see. When the sun goes down, I can't see anymore. It's hard to drive. And then the moisture hadn't come up from the track yet, so the grip was decent. But they did water and it stayed pretty damp the entire race. Yeah, it stayed damp. So for diffs, this is now our new sort of standard, really. And I think people are still too afraid to try this. They should. I even put this in Cavalieri's car without telling him, just because he didn't really want this. He didn't believe this would be good, but I just put it in because I knew it would be good. So 10, 20, 10. When you run the same defoil front and rear, our car just rotates a lot more consistently. So it's easier to maintain the same arc around corners. No matter if you're on power, off power, what speed you're going, it's just more consistent. So 10, 20, 10 or 10, 15, 10 or 15, 15, 20, 15, 15, 30, 15, 20, 30, 20, you know, these kind of diff setups is what we run now. And all kinds of tracks. And then on higher grip, smoother tracks, we can go a lot thicker, even like 50, 150 or even more. So this setup has been really good. I ran the long chassis, the 2+2 chassis. It's smoother. I ran the 43-13 gearing, which is more aggressive. You have to use more throttle when you drive around the track, but you have more acceleration for jumps out of corners and such. This is standard in the limited edition kit, but 45-14 is standard in the stock Mayako MX-8. So this is an option that I want Cavalieri, for example, to test and decide which one he prefers, because this is really driver preference. Both work, but you have to choose one and then stick to it. So I'm trying this now because it's in the limited edition, and then I'll go back to 45-14 later and try to decide for myself which one I want to stick with. Another benefit of this gearing is when you let off, you have more of a drag brake feel. And when you have that drag brake feel, you have more traction when you let off the throttle. So off power into corners, you have more grip. So I thought it would be really good for this surface, and it was. And I'll run this for Silver State also. Another thing, actually, I want Cavalieri to decide on is the chassis, because we have sort of settled on the long chassis. Robert liked it, Thibaut did, I like it too. But Ronne Falk always ran the short chassis. He preferred it. So that's something I also want to test again, to go back to back with the long chassis and the short chassis to see which one I prefer. Then for the shock setup worked out really well. It was very good. We tried a few different combinations, and we ended up with 515 in the front with a Mayako piston, which is a bigger piston, 15.9. Then a smaller piston, 15.8, with more blow-by, so less pack. And then 215, 316 as the piston holes. 700 front, 600 rear. This combination was the best that we tried. We tried a number of different settings, and this worked really well, as you'll see when I show the video soon. So Mayako normal piston in the front for a bit more pack, and then the small piston in the rear for less pack, and then the holes. Now, when you have a different size piston, it's not the same as changing the piston hole sizes. It just works differently. So you just have to trust me. So no matter what piston holes you do, a smaller piston will feel more plush than a bigger piston. Other sort of relevant things in the front, we have an optional universal, and the universal goes sort of hand in hand with the diff setup. It mainly helps the steering feel more linear throughout the corner. So I would say more steering, because you turn in, the amount you turn in when you feel that that's good, it just keeps turning the same. So more consistent on power, off power, and different speeds. And then I have settled on KPI 0.5. I prefer KPI 0.5 over KPI 1 because I feel like I have more rear grip exiting corners. So it's really, that's the reason why I prefer it. So going in, you have a bit more initial steering, mid corner is neutral, and then going out, the car goes more straight. So you accelerate, the rear feels like it has more grip, and it's easier to handle. So I pretty much always run KPI 0.5, and then I pair that with caster 2. So this is definitely my sort of standard setting now. And then front link, I had it all the way up because because the track was rough. I wanted the car to be more in the track and less likely to flip over. Bump steer, I had 0-0. I shim the Ackerman plate up 2 mil, so I have more range to adjust. But I adjusted it with the shim, so it's same as standard rack height 0-0. And the idea with bump steer for me is to have it really neutral, so it doesn't really bump out or bump in. If you have it so it bumps out, the outer tire bumps out on compression, that would mean that you have shims here. Then the car is smoother as you enter a corner or you hit a bump, but then when you get on power mid corner, it will turn more. I don't like that feeling. I even prefer if it's the opposite, where it maybe even bumps in a bit on compression, because then the steering is aggressive into the corner, but then as soon as you're in the corner, you get on power or you stop braking, the car will turn a bit less, and that tends to be easier to drive for me. So bump steer is really powerful on this car, and it's worth checking it with a setup station. It's not something you can just check the shims, because all the other settings of the arms and the upper links will affect bump steer. So that's why you need the setup station. See, I just made a pitch for my setup tools. Okay, kick up. I had 1 degree more kick up. We had max kick up at one point, but it was, the front end was moving too much, so we didn't like it. Reduced it 1 degree, it was good. Kick up helps the front to stay high when you're on power, so when you hit bumps, you have more suspension travel, and the suspension also feels softer. So more kick up was good. Then no shim in the front, so low diff for the bumps. On the rear, also no shim, so low diff. And here, the C&D plate, we have 2 different ones. We have narrow and wide. And we've been running the wide one a lot and also started with it here. But now, once again, we confirmed what I sort of already knew, which is on these rough California tracks, loose, bumpy, the track often changes a lot. The narrow C&D blocks are better. They are just so much easier to drive in the bumps, more rear grip, more forgiving. So we went with 50 C plate, 54.5 D plate. So 2.25 in towing. Or what is that? 1.75, and then we had 0.5 in the hub. So that is something to keep in mind. We have the narrow C&D plates are standard on the MX-8, but the wide C&D plates are standard on the limited edition. So it's worth having both, except if you only have one style of track. So if you're on like a oiled higher grip track, then the wide C&D are really good. If you're on a loose bumpy track, then the narrower ones are good. So yeah, it's actually, the towing is 2.25, I think, with these, but then we had 0.5 in the hub, so 2.75 actually. I had the 3-piece hub, long arm, long setting, 0.5 tow, middle axle height. Almost always run that. 1 millimeter in front of the hub. It's same as 0 with the plastic hub. shocks were in on the tower, front and rear. On tracks like this, it's good because it makes the movement of the piston more progressive. It starts out slow and then speeds up more. So the initial reaction of the suspension is softer. And that's what you need on a track like this that's really bumpy. You don't want it to bounce around, so you lay down the shocks. But this was actually, I'll show you in the video, one thing which I would like to have changed, at least try, stand up the rear shock a bit, just to give it a bit more support. Because everything on the setup was soft. So the rear arm was lowered, 0.5 down, 0.5 down. Anti-roll bar was 2.4, so 2.1 front, 2.4 rear. So everything was really soft. And if I tried to push the car a bit, I felt that it collapsed a bit too much on the rear. Like it would roll down, and then there wasn't enough suspension travel to absorb bumps. So I would have liked to try the rear shock up one hole. And I think I'll start with this setup at Silver State. And when it gets rough, then I want to see if I stand the shock up one hole, what happens. Or then I start with it already up one hole. I need to decide later. TZO, I ran TZO tires. I also tried Hot Race and tried J Concepts. And oh wait, yeah, did we try Hot Race? Sahara, I think. Yeah, Sahara Super Soft. And we settled on the TZO 200 and 202 in Super Soft and Soft. My main was daytime, so I ran the soft, and Cavalieri ran the soft also in the main at night, but I think maybe he should have run Super Soft. Another thing Pekko came up with was he cut the insert, so the ribs on the inside of the insert, he cut them off completely and glued the foam to the wheel, and that made the tire more flat, so more surface area on the track. Worse for bumps, but our car was so good in the bumps that it wasn't really an issue. We wanted more traction. And then gluing the foam also, it made it more stable on power. So the back left corner where you land and you do that sweep on power, and the right hand, the right side of the track also on power. All at the end of the straight, all those sections, the car was so much more stable with the cut and glued foam. It was really good. So yeah, TZO works very well on these California tracks. Wing, we were one of the few that ran Lexan wings. I don't really know why, because we've tried those plastic snow shovels and they are the worst out of all the wings. That's my opinion, and Pekko's also. So the standard old school kind of Mayako Kyosho HB wing, the plastic wing, is the most stable out of all. Then the Lexan wing just makes the car feel more light and nimble, and it rotates a lot more in tight corners and a bit less stable in the air. But it gives the car a sort of more agile, light feeling. It's a clear, distinct difference. Then when you put one of these sort of Lexan shaped but plastic wings on, it doesn't have either benefit. It doesn't have the stability of a regular style plastic wing, and it doesn't have that agility and light feeling and rotation and lightweight, meaning that it's far less likely to flip the car. It doesn't have either of those. So it's in the middle, and it's just not as good as either one. So I would urge people who run that style of wing to try the old school plastic or the Lexan, because I think that one of those will be better than those sort of Lexan looking but plastic wings, because they have neither of the benefits of the other style of wing. And we ran the Lexan throughout, because the only time to really run a plastic wing would be if we have serious problems with consistency and rear traction, and we need to make the car really easier to drive, but that hasn't really happened yet. When you run a plastic wing that's bigger and heavier, bulkier, it kind of slows down the response or reaction of the rear end. So it will roll more but slower, and the car feels more calm. And then it's also easier in the air. So I would say this is also a skill level thing. You have to be honest with yourself. If you're a good driver and you drive very consistently, then you can benefit from the Lexan. But if you need your car to be easier to drive, then the Wing of David is the way to go. We also had a prototype rear tower on our car. It was higher for more up travel. And we're sort of experimenting, but didn't really have time now since there was so limited practice to test with bump stops. So that's something that we'll hopefully be able to prepare and test for Silver State. And when we run the Lexan wing, we run it in the lowest position, so it's attached to the gearbox. Then when we run the plastic wing, we attach it to the middle position. It seems to be the best solution. I actually forgot I was going to prepare some pictures, but I'll make a post about it. I'll make a post about how we run the shock standoffs and also about the brake linkage, because yet again, we had a situation where Cavalieri had some issues with his brakes. But when I rebuilt his car for the race and did the linkage the proper way, there's no issues. It worked perfectly throughout the race. So that's something I'll make another post about, because it's not really that complicated. You just have to build it right. Okay, so let's look at the video a bit, and then I'll mention these setup changes and where you could notice them and where they were good. Okay, how do I do this now so I actually remember what to talk about? Video file. Maybe I should have uploaded it here. Let's see how this works. It would help if I remembered where I saved it. Okay, let's see.
The brakes. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Checking the brakes.
Okay, let's check the quality of this. Need to go watch myself on YouTube to see. And it's pretty much filmed with a potato at the moment, right? I think I should have uploaded this to StreamYard first. Just loading. Okay, let's see. Okay, it's decent, I guess. So here we see Pekko's super fast pit stops. Scotty clearly doesn't want to mention me at all. So it was just silence whenever I was there. So thankfully, Charlie was there. So this was towards the end of the main. Two things, really. So line choice. Line choice was one thing. I figured that I wasn't going to really do this triple, just double single. And in the middle, there was a smooth part. I didn't hit it every time, but when I didn't, I made sure that I didn't gas it too much so that the car wouldn't get too upset, because when I did, I had issues. So this back section here, this right-hander, there were some ruts here. And this is one of those sections where I would have liked to have the rear shock stood up more. The reason is that if I tried to push through this section, it really upset the car a lot. So I was really careful here. I tried different lines, but figured the best would be to just go slowly and keep it tight here. Now, I think that the reason for the car not being that good here was because the rear was too soft. So when I went slowly, it didn't compress much, and it had a lot of suspension travel to handle the bumps. And of course, I was going slower. As soon as I pushed more, it would compress because I was cornering and on throttle. So it would compress so much that there wasn't enough suspension travel to take care of the bumps. And then it would get unsettled. So this would be one section where I thought that raising the rear shock would be better. And over here, my car was really good. I could really sort of go anywhere. This hole, I was careful to not flip. Here, I was confident, always drove around the holes, but that was the goal. But like there, you saw, I hit the holes, but it didn't really matter. I just stayed on power. This left-hander before the finish. I went too tight, went through the holes, but I stayed on power and it was fine. And then going on to the straight, in warm-up, I tried a couple of different lines. But I think that the safest for me was to go slow and go tight. Now, if I had had a race and I noticed that someone else was taking a different line and going faster, or just going faster in that section, then I would have changed up or taken a bigger risk. But I didn't need to. So then I never had an issue here in the whole race. And that's something that a lot of drivers, even some of the best who offend themselves very often, I don't know if it's overconfidence or if it's a lack of sort of race craft in a sense. But as a driver, you have to know where to place your car. And you also have to know where you should play it safe and where you should risk it or risk it a bit. So this was one section where I didn't feel like I needed to go any faster. So why? I just played safe. So I would just, go to the very inside. I would brake even a bit and then get on the power slightly to go through the bumps and then straight. And I stayed to the inside because, yes, I could go faster. But if I go faster here, it's again higher risk. For what reward? Not much, really. So I tried to keep it tight here. There was a hole in this double jump if you went in the middle, and the car wouldn't jump as much. Or if you were unlucky, it would get somehow unsettled. So I just jumped to the inside. Very few people were jumping that far to the inside. And also then back here. So there was a bump somewhere here. And when you watch the main, you can see Fend hit it twice, I think. One time he spun out, one time he flipped over. And this was the kind of section where I again wonder that, is it just confidence or what is it? Because there's a bump there, then why do you just go that fast there? I don't understand. So what I would do is I wouldn't even try and do the corner normally. So I would do the jump and then slow down, square up, and then go. Because that way, if I did hit the bump, I would be going slow. And if I didn't, I would have a straight line, quite smooth section of the track here. So time-wise, yes, it's faster to just do it perfectly, but the risk is too high once again. So see, it looks like a weird line, really. But it was something that I noticed when I walked the track, and I decided I would do that. And I tried to do that every lap. So tight on the straight, tight in that corner, jump on the inside, square up. And then when I know I'm on the right line, then I gas it. Here, drive around the bumps, stay wide, drive around the bumps. And this line also, this is something that also surprised me watching many other drivers. Because if you drove here next to this pipe and just continued straight, you would drive between two bumps. Then you made a tight corner here and you could accelerate straight into the whoops or whatever you call this. What did they call it on the stream? The anti-rhythm section. But I actually made it a rhythm section because I tried to go between those bumps every lap. And then when I saw I was between them, then I would turn. And then I had a straight line to the whoops. And I kind of knew what speed to hit them. I doubled in, I think it is, and then kept a steady throttle. And watch, I think this was a decent pass through them. You see that? And then you just you have to look at the car and then respond, like add a bit more throttle or let off a bit, but you sort of keep the throttle on, keep the momentum moving forward. And yeah, I thought my car was really easy to drive, and it actually calmed me down. I was nervous in the beginning, and I've had this issue where my hands start shaking, but now the car was somehow so stable and safe feeling that it gave me confidence, and my hands stopped shaking, and I felt safe driving the car. And here you can see that even in a situation like this in the whoops, here I wanted to get past this guy before the corner. I didn't want to have an issue here in the jump section, so I went a bit faster, and you can see that the car starts bouncing. But this kind of reaction of the car, I still felt like it was under control. So whenever it would start to bounce, I wasn't afraid that it would flip over. So if we think about the setup I had, the things that help in a situation like that is I had the front knuckle in the middle, I had the upper link long and up on the tower, I had the diff low, I had more caster 2. Those are all things that help in a situation like that. So the car was good in the whoops, but if something went wrong, I also had a bit of a safety buffer in a sense that I knew I would have time to react and try and save it. And also the shock setup really helped with that. So the smaller piston in the rear and the 5-hole setup. The oil felt like you could feel the oil when you move the suspension, so it was thick feeling, and that helps to slow down the responsiveness of the car. Okay, let's check some comments now. If you haven't had any questions about the video or the setup sheet. What is your RC car brand called? Well, the car that I run is called Mayako. And what you're watching now is Invisible Speed. So we've found that on the front, we run the plastic arm braces, but rear, we pretty much always run the carbon braces. It's just more consistent. I know some people say that a softer arm is better in the bumps, but I just think that there's so much flex everywhere already that the carbon arm helps the alignments to stay more consistent. You can push the car more. You can make the car handle bumps with your suspension. You don't need to make the arms soft. So we always run the carbon arm braces. Yes, the narrow pivot can be run with the adjustable arms because the long arm setting on the adjustable arms is the same as the sort of standard one-length arm. So you can achieve the same setting on the arm. Please explain better toe on rear hub. Okay, well, I will show you the setup sheet again. So here on the setup sheet, you can see that we have different towing options with the C and D block. What I did was I ran a 50 front C block and paired it with a 54.5 D block. That's not how they are sort of intended to be run. You see here on the setup sheet, you run 3 degrees or 1.5 or 0.5, and then the wide block is 1.5. But I combined them in a different way because I wanted to have a bit more towing. So I got 2.25 towing there. And then what we can also do is we can add towing in the hub. So this hub insert, first of all, we have that large offset, middle offset, low offset. When you run the long arm, you run the low offset. So the track width stays the same. Long arm, low offset. Then we can also adjust towing. So 0 towing in the hub, 0.5 or 1. The reason this is really good is if you are on a loose track and you just want a bit more rear traction, you can add towing in the hub, and it's not going to reduce your steering. So you keep the same steering, but get more rear traction. So it's a really good thing on loose tracks. Higher grip, the car is more free and faster in corners with 0. Lower grip, 0.5, locks in the rear a bit more, so you'll be faster. So really good setting. Does that make it clear now, Neo? Any up travel changes needed for the bumps? Well, normally we run 1 or 2 mil shims on the rear shocks on the shaft outside the body, limiting up travel. So here on a bumpy track, I would run 0. But we also had this prototype rear tower, which was 2 mil higher. But the reason for that tower isn't really to increase up travel. It's more that we can run some bump stops. But we didn't have time to test that and figure that out. So we just ran the tower as it was. But for Silver State, we hope to have time to try those things. Do you still hate e-buggy? I don't hate e-buggy as much now because it's really good way to test. It's super easy. So you go to the track and you can set up changes, and you can drive a 5-minute run. You make another change, immediately drive another 5-minute run. Everything stays clean. It's super easy, consistent. So it's actually, e-buggy is good for testing, I think. But for racing, I definitely prefer Nitro. For racing, I don't really like to race e-buggy. Brian G says 1999. This is maybe the biggest super chat I ever got. Thanks, Brian. He says, I hope the RC world starts to understand how invaluable this content format is. Thumbs up. Thank you. Amazing. We had never mentioned Kana's drive from the back and fastest overall laps in the main. Yes, I actually did mention that. I said that I'm on the No Name RC podcast tomorrow, or not tomorrow, next week. And I'll do the lap analysis then. And I expect Kanas and Boots to be very fast when we look at lap times. They both started at the back. Kanas made a couple of mistakes on his own. Boots had some bad luck with traffic and ended up on the pipe and got stuck. So we will look at that in the No Name RC podcast. This is more focused on our experience and the setup here of the Maiako. Okay. JQ, sorry, I'm broke. Your car was puffing so much smoke, more than others, and still ran well and made all the jumps well. Were you running 25%? Did you feel it was on the rich side or just perfect? It was just perfect. I run Sidewinder, and the Sidewinder fuel smokes more than others, I think. And my runtime was actually 10 minutes, 20 seconds, which I think is quite good for me. So it really wasn't rich. I think could it have been leaner? Yes, but I don't like it when it's too lean either, because it changes the power band. It's not as good. When it's, in my opinion, tuned right, the revs drop from full throttle when you let off. The revs drop to idle quickly, and the low end is smoother. And you have more of a power band instead of on off. So I think it was tuned perfectly, and the smoke is just because of the fuel, not because it was overly rich. Does JQ and Scotty have a grudge? Yes, we do. I think originally it started because of RCGP. The second RCGP, if you remember, only had like 27 entries or something ridiculous. And then I think the communication wasn't clear enough. It was more of a situation that, Scotty, we only have so few entries. Can't really justify having you over, but let's try again in the third race. And Scotty, I think his ego got hurt. He made some post that he got fired. He didn't get fired. He made a big stink about it. I think he was in the wrong. I don't really care at this point anymore. I don't have any bad ill will towards him, but he clearly, you can notice on broadcasts and stuff that he avoids me and Maiako. And I still support him. I went to Philippine Masters. I went to the ABC in Indonesia, have said good things about those. And also encouraged a lot more people to go. So I don't know. I think at this point, it's on him. Also, I know that we have some political differences. Now, that doesn't really affect me, but I know that people on that side of the political spectrum, if you don't agree with them, they take it very personally. DNC was better than Redovan because the track was unpredictable and off-road. I have to agree with that, actually. I very much prefer off-road to the style of tracks that we have now in Europe, where they treat the surface and it's super smooth. I hope that somehow we get back to more off-roady tracks like this one. So I like DNC and Silver State for the reason that the track develops and gets bumpy, and you have to pick your lines, and you have to really be good with your suspension setup and your throttle inputs and everything. It requires more skill, I think, in every way. But I hate the fact that the race is shit, absolutely shit. They always cut down on practice. Either it's because of the weather or too many entries or some other bullshit. So you never get the track time you are promised, but they keep the entries. They've even raised the entry price a couple of times, and always they say, we raise the entries, but you'll have a better race. So we raise the entries, we limit the entries. We raise the entry fee, we limit the entries. Then they don't do it and just keep the money. So it's really sort of, the races leave a bad taste in my mouth because they are so unfair and there's so little track time. But because all the top drivers go and the tracks are good, then we have to go. So it's kind of a catch-22 in a way. I mean, for many years, I tried to get Joey and the other promoters to improve the formats. I even showed them ways where they could make the same money and the race would be better. But I've given up. I'm too jaded at the moment, I guess. They will never change. So we get what we deserve as an industry, I think. But hopefully we'll have more off-road tracks in the future. I thought the lower and upper arms to bottom hole is what gives the buggy that in the track feeling, or is it the rear lower hole and front up? No. So now we are very confused. Let's look at the sheet here quickly. I think that the best way, front and rear is the same. Let's look at the rear here. So if you raise or lower the lower arm on the inside, so it's these pills here, stock would be 0, 0. Now at this track, I ran 0.5 down, 0.5 down. So I lowered the entire arm. Why would I do that? I did that because when you do that, the suspension is softer. This is how you get support in the car. A 0.5 mil change on the lower arm here is a big deal because the most force travels in the lower arm. So when you lower it, the car will want to roll down more. More of the force goes into the shock instead of through the arm. There's less of a jacking force trying to keep the buggy up, right? Or no jacking force in the lower arm when you go low enough, right? So the car will want to roll more and want to roll down when you lower the arm on the inside here, like I did, 0.5 mil. So lower roll center. But the change to the roll center here isn't that big. You could still have a high roll center and just lower the arm, and your car would be still feel on the track. But then when you would push, maybe it would go down finally. But it would sort of be inconsistent to drive. So how you adjust the location of the roll center more is with the upper link. So you would go up for a lower roll center. So lower arm, when you go down, it's a lower roll center, more in the track. Upper link, you go up and it's a lower roll center, more in the track. On the front, I did that. On the front, I had the link up because I wanted the car to be more in the track. On the rear, I had it in the middle. It's a neutral setting on our car, and then 0.5 down on the C&D blocks to soften the suspension a bit. I hope that explains it. Can you explain a bit more about the knuckle in the middle? So the front steering knuckle, we can raise it 1 mil, have it in the middle, or lower it 1 mil from the middle. So when it's in the middle, we can move it in either direction 1 millimeter. The middle position is a very neutral setting. If I go down with the knuckle, then I'll have more initial grip, more turn steering into corners, but it will also catch bumps more. If I go all the way up, that's the most forgiving, the least amount of initial response, least amount of side bite, but it also does want to go up on 2 wheels easier, but it happens slowly. So it will kind of bicycle and then you can still catch it. On really rough tracks, it can be worth trying though, but we didn't need to try it even here. But middle or up for really bumpy tracks, I would say, and middle and down on smoother tracks. Okay. Love from Colombia. I heard that we have a service center there now. So that's good. We're going to have more Mayakos in Colombia. The next member parts are front and rear shock towers. We have a front shock tower with these inserts. So you can go shorter with the link, and a rear shock tower with a higher shock position. And there are a few other parts coming also, a rear hub, different rear hubs, center diff mount, and then e-buggy development for the worlds. Okay. What has more impact to the roll center? You should watch my roll center video or some lives about roll centers because I explain it. I've explained it many times. Any interest in 2-stage springs on the front? I think they're better in the rear. When they're on the front, they make the steering feel imprecise. I used to have those sort of progressive springs, but really they are 2-stage springs. I need to make those for Mayako too because the sort of regional ones, they're a bit too long. So I'll make new ones. I think there's some benefits to be gained with those kind of springs. I assume you'll be at Philippine Masters 25. Yes, I will. Silver State, and then the week after PM25. What will have more impact to the roll center, by moving camber links or by moving CND book pills? So, like I said, moving the link changes the position of the roll center more. But moving the lower arm just a tiny bit changes how the forces travel through the car. The roll center doesn't move much, but it changes how the forces travel through the car. So in a sense, you want to set your lower arm first to set what the car does at the limit. Does it feel soft or does it feel stiff and maybe lose traction suddenly? Like that's what you notice. With a high lower arm, the car feels stiff. With a lower arm, the car feels soft, and it will always do that on the limit, right? So that's what you adjust with the arm. The geometric stiffness is connected to how hard you push the car. A roll bar or a spring is always the same stiffness, right? But if you push the car harder, the arm will resist roll more if it's high on the inside, right? You can get to a point where the car doesn't want to roll. So the harder you corner, it still stays high. if the arm is too low, the harder you corner, at some point it just will roll down, and you put a harder roll bar on, harder spring on, then you drive in harder, and it still rolls down. So this is kind of what, for example, this is an issue when you have C and D blocks which are too wide or too narrow. There's like a window where it works for our cars. If you go either direction, then this becomes a problem. You can't set your car up to sort of work in the way you want. It's either too soft always, too low, or it's too stiff and drives high around the track. Like you can't get the setting right, and it's because of this pivot width and how the forces travel through the arms and links when you corner. So this lower arm position is important to set correctly because it determines the nature of the car. Is the car nature soft or is it stiff? And then how you adjust in the track or off the track, how likely it's flipping over, fending yourself off the track, or how likely it is that you almost crash and you get on power and it just feels like it gets sucked back to the track surface. That you do with a link. A higher link on the tower, more in the track. So you get on power, you can save a crash. If you go down on the link here, the car will be more aggressive, but it might fly off the track, right? So here, if you have a very low link, and depending on other settings on the car, the roll center is high, what happens is when you start to crash, you have to let off the throttle. You have to slow down to save it. When you have a very low roll center link up, when you're about to crash, you get on power and you save it. It's the opposite, right? So I hope that explains it a bit. But all of these things, they work together. So if one thing is out of whack, then this that I just explained, it will feel like it doesn't make sense. But I swear it does. It's just because something else is so far out the window. We have cars like that on the market. I'm not going to name names, but I think if you watch enough of my videos, you know. Thoughts on Maifield not running a front sway bar on his techno buggy? He posted a photo on Facebook. I think that's because his shocks are so far out on the arms. So the front end is just so stiff, so he runs no roll bar. I honestly think that Maifield, how can I say this? Maifield is winning more than the car, I think. Okay. Because yeah, I haven't driven it. I haven't tried it. I've just watched, and it looks really good, except when it doesn't suddenly, right? And I just have a feeling that it looks very good because of him. Because you can also look at the other drivers. Like, I just think that if you have someone like him and such a big team and all those guys, and you just like 90% of the time you're racing on tracks like that, then I think, honestly, I think that it could be better. And I'm not saying this because it's techno or this or that. You should know by now that I give my honest opinion, good or bad, regardless of who it is. I just think that they are going too extreme with, they get some idea and then they just go, oh, let's go all the way. And that's not how you make a car really good. There are very few things where you can go far in one direction. And it's so beneficial that you do it. And I think that some of the choices they make are not the right ones. And I mean, if you think I'm wrong, then where was Maifield at the Worlds? Quarterfinal or 1/8 final? Like, nowhere. And yes, there were some technos that managed to be fast Joao, for example, but he had to do very extreme things. And it's I just think that if you want to make a car really good, it needs to be really good on all different conditions, all different skill levels. You can't do it with one car, but you can make the parts, option parts, that you can then adjust the car to be good in all conditions for all skill level drivers. That's my goal, at least. And I think that some brands are very much in one direction and then they are stuck. And Techno is that way. But I'm not sure if now this direction, Mayfield's car is, if it's actually better even on these tracks. It would be very interesting to see. If he drove other cars and compared, like, how would it be? Anyway. Did the tall antenna make a difference? Yes, the antenna makes a big difference. This is a RC car. RC cars have antennas. Why 4mm front hex? The 4mm front hex, I still need to go more back to back with this, but I swear I feel that the 4mm front hex is smoother with a KPI 0.5. That's why I run that. Okay, I'm not the only one then. Thank you. Mayfield's car looked really on top of the track and hard to drive. Manny Churchman, thank you. That's okay. Now we officially have the biggest super chat. $50 from Manny. Here's your bonus for making Cavalieri great again and winning on TZL. Okay, thank you very much. I think for Silver State we will be even better. So we already have a plan in place for what to do for Silver State, and I really hope that the old Pudge that we know is back. Okay, Richie Sack, I've joined the Antenna Mafia after that race. Great. That's good. We need more antennas out there. Actually, Pekko, me, and Cavalieri had antennas. Very happy about that. So which way to go on a really slippery track? Low roll center to make the car softer or higher, RC? So this is a good question. On really slippery track, you want to have initial grip in the car. So you want the initial grip so that you can turn into corners. You can stop a slide when you get on power. And you do that by having a higher roll center. But then if it's a very sort of loamy, bumpy, loose track, the lower roll center would help to make the car feel in the track and give you more confidence to drive around the track. Because with a higher roll center, sometimes mid-corner of power, the car is loose. So high roll center, you turn in well, you exit well, but mid-corner is difficult. Low roll center, smoother all round, and you have confidence mid-corner. So this really is there's not one correct answer to this. Driver preference, the actual track surface layout, all of that plays a part. So it's a bit of a sort of middle of the road as far as roll centers are concerned on a really loose track. It's not something where it's very clear. Like on a very high grip track, you want to go low roll centers, especially with the link. You want the car to be in the track. Then with the arm, you find the right height where the car isn't too soft and also not too hard. So that's kind of clear cut, simple. But when you go the opposite to a loose track, it could really go either way. So it's more of a sort of middle setting. To me, Fenn's car looked so much more drivable. Okay, this is a perfect segue. We're almost done. We've been going 20 minutes over time already, at least. But we need to end on this, because I think one of the things I even posted there was, why do people not beat Maifield yet? I think, right? Where do I see my own description on YouTube? I don't know. Someone help me. But anyway, let's talk about that. So Maifield won 3 out of 4 classes, I believe. Seth won truck. I've heard some rumblings of Maifield making a wrong setup choice or having some issue in Truggy. I'm not sure if that was the case, but I mean, Seth was really a lot faster. So hats off to him. We were actually cheering for him, like the underdog in the track main. So it was really fun to watch. Yeah, I think, let's finish on this. We talk about Fend and Maifield, then Cavalieri, is he washed up just a bit? And then the 30-minute main, how did I do the 30-minute main without crashing? Let's just finish on that real quick. I actually agree with this, that Fend's car looked better than Maifield's somehow, just the eye test kind of looking. I thought at one point when Fend had the lead, like, okay, now it's done. Like now he's going to win. He's going to pull away. But then he started making mistakes. But then Maifield was also making mistakes at one point. Like he even had a massive crash on the front triple. He landed on his roof. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like I've never seen Maifield blow out, but now I'm witnessing it. But then he regrouped and what's his name? What's his face? Mason Fuller was also leading at some point. I can't remember, but then Maifield just took control of the race and won. And I honestly think it's because his racecraft and his driving is just so good. Because in that situation, you're not leading the race and you're making mistakes. It's so easy to just blow out. But he regrouped, found the connection to the car again, placed his car correctly on the track, and then increased his speed. So there has to be some thinking going on there between his ears, right? He's not just driving around the track. He's thinking about what he's doing. Kind of what I showed you with my line choices in the 40 plus main. Same idea, different level. Okay, he's going faster, but it's the same thing. And Fend would hit the same bump many times and then hit it too fast and flip off the track. And it's just like, why do you do that? You're a professional driver. You shouldn't do that. That's my opinion. Like, you can't set a car up to where you can just drive it however you want. You still have to use your brain. You still have to think about what you're doing, and you still have to slow down in some sections if you notice that your car isn't handling that well. You can't just go as fast as you can every second. It doesn't make any sense to me. And that's kind of what it looked like with Fend. Like I think, honestly, I feel like he had what he needed to win, but he didn't drive smart enough to do that. We've said it before. Before, it's been an issue with the setup. Like, we can actually see that he's not doing anything wrong and his car flies off the track. But I didn't really see it now. I saw him picking the wrong line, like turning in too soon and clipping a corner when he didn't need to. He could have just easily lost a tenth of a second, taken a safe line and never clipped that pipe. But he clips the pipe and flips over. I don't understand. Like, that is one issue that he needs to get over if he wants to start winning consistently. Like, he's trying to go too fast. He's like Chase Sexton in Supercross. He's fast, yes, but he's every other race he crashes out of a win. It's mental, not the car at this point for Fend, I would say. And then the opposite for Maifield. He wins because he's mentally so strong and he has the confidence and he races smart. And then when it comes to the next generation, why are these guys not beating Maifield? I think it's because none of them are working hard enough or smart enough. They just go to these races and do the best they can, but they don't practice or test enough. Maifield has so much experience and he has learned so much from different people around him and also by his own testing that he has the required knowledge to make changes that will help him in the race. And these young guys don't have it. They are more followers instead of leaders. So they will ask Maifield what setup he's running, ask Maifield what tires he's running. They'll look at what he's doing and follow instead of forging their own path where they could actually do something better because they are not Maifield. Mayfield's doing what's best for him. Other people are following, doing what's best for other people and haven't considered what's best for them. And they haven't put in the effort at the track testing to figure that out. That's why I think that they can't beat Maifield. Yes, Seth won truck. Okay, 1 out of 4. Yippee. But most other races, it's either Fend or Maifield. When Fend doesn't fend himself, he has a chance. Otherwise, Maifield wins. That's pretty much the standard right now. I think Mason Fuller, he should be winning now. He's younger. He has a good car. He has everything going for him. He should be winning. He should be the new Maifield. Maifield should be second now. Mason Fuller should be like Ongaro. Ongaro arrived, boom, old guys are done. Or Canas. Canas arrives, old guys are done. We don't see Robert winning races anymore. We don't see Savoia winning races in Europe. Those guys don't win because the new generation in Europe has somehow been able to get the track time, do the work to figure out what works for them. Ongaro has a very unique setup for him. Canas, I don't know as much about him, but when I watch his car, it looks different to everyone else because of how he drives. So I'm sure his setup also is different enough to where it suits him. And that's what's missing with these Americans. It's something to do with, I think it's something to do with culture, to be honest. And I swear this is not political, but there is something about wanting to fit in, like the poser mentality in a sense, like this is not cool enough. I have to be part of this cool group, you know? And people, because of that kind of thinking, they don't think like, fuck everyone else. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to win. I'm going to do my own thing, whatever that is. And I'm going to be the best. Instead, they are like looking at who's fast and then wanting to like kiss their ass and be a part of that. Like, I swear it has something to do with that. It's mental also. Like I said, Fenn doesn't win more because of his mental approach to racing and driving and the decisions he makes. And these kids like Spencer Hackett, Mason Fuller, Lee Setzer, I mean, maybe even Rivkin in especially 8 scale. Who else? Aidan Horn. I can't think of, you know, the guys. They're always in the main, they're fast, but they aren't beating Maifield. And this is why. It's the mentality. For example, I would say that Pekko, okay, this is a biased opinion, but the last time he drove was Montpellier, 8 scale. And then before that, it was the Worlds, I think, right? So just explain how he can go to DNC, not have a single practice run, then qualify in the C, but win the C, and finish 5th in the B main. After running touring car in Thailand. Like, how is that possible? I think that it has to do with the mental approach, okay? The reason why he hasn't done better is lack of track time and lack of confidence. He lacks confidence, he gets nervous. In practice, he can match the best guys. Then as soon as the race starts, he's a bit more timid because he doesn't have the confidence. But what he does have and why he can be a top driver in the future, if he gets the track time in, he has the right mental attitude. He doesn't care that much about what other people do. He analyzes his own car and thinks about what he can do to make it better. So his idea was the floating steering servo system, because in touring car, when you move the attachment further forward, the flex changes, the steering angle is more consistent. And he thought, hey, let's do that for 8 scale. We did it. It was better. His idea was also running the front diff oil, front and rear. No one does that. But he thought, in 10 scale, we do this. And I felt that it's good. So let's try it here. So he thinks like that. He has the right attitude. He does things himself. And that's why I think he, in a sense, overperformed at this race. And that's the reason why these guys are underperforming, because they don't have that. They ask Maifield, what are you running? And then they run that. So that's the problem, I think. It has nothing to do with their skill or opportunities or anything. It's purely the culture of wanting to be one of the guys, right? That's what I think. Young American culture coined the term try hard, and that perfectly fits with what you're talking about. These kids are scared to be viewed this way, to be a try hard, to try too hard. I don't know, but it has something to do with that, I'm pretty sure. There's a certain kind of hunger is missing. Oh, last thing. How the hell did I do that main and not crash? Okay, last thing, then I have to go. I think it's kind of what I explained before about the setup, thinking about the setup for yourself, thinking about how you drive. But there's one more thing, and this is something that everyone can do. So this year, we started the youth mentoring program. And the idea is to make sure that people who run the Mayako get the most out of running the car, and especially young drivers who want to improve and make the most out of their driving, that we give them everything they need to do so. So crazy Polish guy, Pavel, we've talked a lot about how to practice better and how to get more out of your practice. And he swears by VRC, the video game. And I decided to try that. So I started running what he suggested, 12 scale modified on the Bangkok track. And I actually haven't even managed to do it that much now, but I did it quite a bit around Christmas and New Year, early January. And I need to get back to doing it, because I think that when you drive with your own radio on the VRC game, so 12 scale modified on-road, it's not the same as off-road, but you are teaching and training your muscle memory. And I swear it helps. For example, I have a problem. Well, now in touring car, I had this issue with my hand shaking, which hasn't really been an issue before. But what I tend to do is I tense up when I drive. And it's not good, because when you do that, your reactions aren't as good and your precision suffers. You need to be it's the same with playing the guitar. I tense up and I can't do it. So I need to stay relaxed, and it starts in the shoulders and goes through the arms and wrists and fingers and everything. So doing the VRC, that's something you can focus on, for example. So you drive VRC and you consciously focus on staying relaxed. So other drivers may have other kind of issues, or other drivers may not be able to get to the real track enough to drive. VRC is something you could potentially do every single day, because if you have a computer or radio, you can do it, even if you just do it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I'm sure everyone has that time. So this is something we're going to talk more about, and I'll share some of the information also on our social media, but mainly we're going to do this within that coaching group for the youth. So VRC really can help your driving. And so that's one of the reasons. So VRC, more wheel time, perfecting the setup for yourself, thinking about what you need to be comfortable. So making the car comfortable for you, and then driving within yourself. So starting out consistent laps, figuring out where the limit of the car is, and then build your speed from there, instead of just starting at full speed and crashing. Then you have no clue where the limit is. And something I haven't done now, but which I will do as soon as I get to the track, is when you practice, don't just drive around the track. Do 5-minute runs. Do 5-minute timed runs. Find your speed first, where you can do many consistent 5-minute runs in a row. Then start making changes each 5-minute run. About 10 runs like that in a day is plenty. Probably can't even focus much more than that. But if you do that when you go to the track, I swear you will see a big improvement. And maybe all of these guys who should be beating Maifield and aren't, if they start doing this, I promise you they will beat him. Okay? Oh, we have a positive comment. I freaking love this guy. LOL. Maybe that's when I was talking about the kids. Pavel is the man. Yes. Okay. Is Neo here for the last question? Otherwise, we just have to go. Did you raise the ride height for the bumps? Not really. 25, 27 I ran. Pretty normal. Okay, no last question. Thanks till next time. You know what we'll do? We'll just watch these laps again because they were awesome. Okay. Goodbye. See you next time. Thanks to everyone. Oh, we got a last super chat too. Thanks, JQ. This was a great live. Thank you. The next coaching session is next week. We have 2 meetings, one for Asia and one for Europe/America. So Mayako Youth Mentoring Program coaching next week.
There. Hopefully the track crew sees that. That could be a game ender for somebody. Quagrain up and over that hip jump, coming up a little short, but able to survive. Sometimes they come up short over that hip jump, and they go stumbling, rumbling, and tumbling down the face. 43.3 for JQ that time. Bye. JQ now coming up with some more lappers.
4 minutes, Charlie, 4 to go.
Oof.
Quite the spread here from the front runners, but Truy now right behind Saxton.
Oh, wow.
Look at this, Truy, with that pit stop stuff that happened. We got a battle here, 0.3.